The sound of the slap cracked through the grand hall like a whip, silencing the murmurs of 200 wolves instantly. Cassandra Miller tasted copper. She didn't reach for her cheek. She didn't cry out. She simply stared at the polished black boots in front of her, her breath trembling in her chest. She was on her knees, the cold stone floor seeping through her thin dress, chilling her to the bone. "Look at me when I speak to you, Cassandra," Marcus growled. Slowly, she lifted her head. Marcus, her husband of 3 years, the beta of the Silver Ridge Pack, loomed over her. His handsome face, usually masked in a veneer of polite indifference, was now twisted into a sneer of pure disgust. "I thought," Cassandra's voice was a broken whisper, "I thought tonight was our anniversary." "It is," Marcus said, his voice booming so every wolf in the back of the hall could hear. "It marks 3 years of failure, 3 years of weakness, 3 years of a Luna who cannot provide an heir." Cassandra's heart hammered against her ribs. She scanned the room, the pack members, people she had cooked for, healed, and cared for, looked away. No one moved to help her. To her right, standing near the Alpha's throne, stood Elder Morrison. The old man leaned on his cane, his gray eyes watching her with a look that wasn't pity. It was triumph. "I have taken every herb," Cassandra pleaded, desperation clawing at her throat. "I have done everything Elder Morrison told me to do. Please, Marcus." "Enough," Marcus roared. The sound made the stained glass windows vibrate. "The pack is weak because you are weak. A beta needs a strong mate, a fertile mate." Marcus stepped back. He grabbed the hand of a woman standing in the shadows. Isabel Thornton stepped forward. She was tall, blonde, and smiling, the daughter of the neighboring Alpha. "Isabel carries strong blood," Marcus announced. Lifting Isabel's hand, "She will give me sons. She will give this pack a future." Then, the air in the room grew heavy. The static charge of magic began to build. Cassandra felt it in her gut, a sickness, a premonition. Marcus looked down at her, his eyes flashing with the amber light of his wolf. "I, Marcus Miller, beta of the Silver Ridge Pack, hereby reject you, Cassandra Miller." The words hit her harder than the slap. "No," she gasped, clutching her chest. "I reject you as my mate," Marcus continued, his voice remorseless. "I reject you as my Luna. You are barren. You are worthless. You are a stain upon our bloodline." The bond, that golden, invisible thread that had connected her soul to his for 3 years, snapped. It wasn't a clean break. It felt like someone had reached inside her chest, wrapped their fingers around her lungs, and ripped them out. Cassandra screamed. It was a raw, animalistic sound of agony that echoed off the stone walls. She curled into a ball on the floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Through the haze of pain, she saw Elder Morrison lean toward Marcus. The old man whispered something, his lips barely moving. "The bloodline must end tonight," Morrison murmured. "Finish it." Cassandra's hearing, sharper than usual due to the adrenaline, caught the words, bloodline. But she was an orphan. She was nobody. Marcus nodded. He signaled to 2 enforcers. "Bring the iron." The crowd gasped. "Marcus, no!" Cassandra cried out, scrambling backward, her heels sliding on the stone. "Rejection is enough. You don't have to—" "A rejected Omega must be marked," Marcus said coldly, "so no other wolf makes the mistake of claiming my garbage." 2 large warriors grabbed her arms, pinning her to the floor. She thrashed, kicking and screaming, but they were too strong. From the side, a 3rd warrior approached carrying a long iron rod. The tip glowed a menacing, angry red. "Please," she sobbed, looking at Isabel. "Help me." Isabel just smoothed her silk dress and looked away. Marcus took the iron. He didn't hesitate. He pressed the glowing metal into the soft skin of Cassandra's right shoulder. The smell of burning flesh filled the air instantly. The pain was blinding, white-hot and consuming. Cassandra's vision went black, her scream dying in her throat as her body went limp from the shock. "Take her to the border," Marcus commanded, tossing the cooling iron aside. "Dump her in the forbidden forest. If she survives the rogues, she's welcome to live as one." Rain. That was the first thing she felt. Freezing, relentless rain pelting her face. Cassandra opened her eyes. She was lying in mud. Above her, the canopy of ancient trees blocked out the moonlight, leaving her in near total darkness. Her shoulder throbbed with a pulse of fire, radiating heat through her shivering body. She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave way. She collapsed back into the wet earth. Rejected, barren garbage. Marcus's words circled in her mind like vultures. She should just lie here. She should let the cold take her. It would be easier than living with the hollowness in her chest where the mate bond used to be. Snap. A twig broke nearby. Cassandra froze. The forbidden forest wasn't just trees. It was the hunting ground for things that civilized packs feared. Rogues, feral wolves, monsters. She held her breath, listening. The rain masked the sound of footsteps, but she could feel the vibration in the ground. Heavy paws. Something massive was circling her. A low growl vibrated through the bushes to her left, then another to her right. Yellow eyes appeared in the darkness. 3 pairs, 4 pairs. Rogues. They stepped into the small clearing. They were emaciated, their fur matted with mud and blood, teeth bared in hungry snarls. They smelled the fresh burn on her shoulder. They smelled her weakness. "Look what the beta threw out." One of the wolves snarled a mental link that was jagged and crazy. "Fresh meat." Cassandra scrambled backward until her back hit the rough bark of a pine tree. She had no weapon. She couldn't shift. Her wolf was too weak. Buried under years of wolfsbane-laced medicine she hadn't known she was taking. The lead rogue, a gray wolf with a missing ear, lunged. Cassandra squeezed her eyes shut and raised her hands. Boom! Thunder didn't crash from the sky. It came from the earth. A massive black shape blurred through the air, intercepting the gray rogue mid-jump. There was a sickening crunch of bone, and the rogue was thrown 10 feet away, landing in a broken heap. Cassandra opened her eyes. Standing between her and the pack was a wolf, but calling it a wolf felt like an insult. It was a monster of muscle and midnight black fur, standing nearly as tall as a horse at the shoulder. Power radiated off it in waves, thick and suffocating, making the air crackle with ozone. The giant wolf turned its head. Its eyes weren't yellow or red. They were gray, the color of a storm cloud right before the lightning strikes. The remaining rogues whimpered, tails tucked between their legs, and scrambled into the dark, terrified of this apex predator. The giant black wolf didn't chase them. It turned fully toward Cassandra. She stopped breathing. This beast was terrifying, lethal, and radiated an alpha aura so potent it made her dizzy. It stepped closer, looming over her. Rain dripped from its muzzle. It lowered its massive head, sniffing the air around her. It paused at her shoulder, near the fresh burn mark. A low rumble started in its chest, not a growl, but something deeper. A purr, no. A vibration of recognition. The wolf's snout brushed against her cheek. It was hot. The contact sent a jolt of electricity straight down her spine, making her toes curl. It wasn't the pain of the iron. It was a spark. A tiny flickering flame in the cold void of her soul. "Who?" Cassandra whispered, her vision blurring as exhaustion finally won. "Who are you?" The wolf didn't answer. It simply lay down next to her, curling its massive body around her shivering form to shield her from the rain. As the warmth of its fur seeped into her skin, Cassandra surrendered to the darkness. Warmth. That was the first sensation Cassandra registered, not the humid, sticky warmth of the forest, but the dry, crackling warmth of a hearth fire and softness. She was lying on something that felt like clouds wrapped in silk. She shifted, and a sharp sting in her shoulder made her hiss. "Careful, Chica, the salve needs time to set." Cassandra's eyes snapped open. She bolted upright, clutching the silk sheet to her chest. She was in a room that looked like it belonged in a Gothic novel. High stone ceilings, dark mahogany furniture, and a massive fireplace where logs popped and hissed. The bed she was in was enormous, draped in velvet curtains. Sitting in a plush armchair next to the bed was a woman. She had warm brown skin, curly hair tied back in a messy bun, and kind eyes. She was wiping her hands on a towel stained with green paste. "Where am I?" Cassandra asked, her voice raspy. "Shadow Peak," the woman said, standing up to pour a glass of water. "Drink. You've been out for 2 days." Cassandra took the glass with shaking hands. Shadow Peak. Her blood ran cold. This was the territory of the exiles, the kingdom of the damned. Legend said the Alpha King of Shadow Peak was a monster who wore human skin. "I need to leave," Cassandra said, swinging her legs out of bed. "If he finds me—" "If who finds you?" A deep baritone voice came from the shadows near the door. Cassandra froze. A man stepped into the light of the fire. He was huge, easily 6'4", with shoulders that filled the doorway. He wore a black shirt unbuttoned at the top, revealing tan skin and hard muscle. But it wasn't his size that stole the air from her lungs. It was the mask. A polished silver mask covered the entire right side of his face, from his forehead down to his jaw. The left side, the exposed side, was heartbreakingly handsome, with a sharp jawline and a heavy brow. But his eye, it was gray, storm gray. The same eyes as the wolf in the forest. "You," Cassandra breathed. The man didn't smile. He walked toward the bed with the grace of a predator stalking its prey. The healer, Elena, dipped her head in respect and quietly slipped out of the room, closing the heavy oak door behind her. Now they were alone. "You should be resting," the man said. His voice was like rough velvet dark, smooth and commanding. "You saved me," Cassandra said, clutching the sheet tighter as he stopped right beside the bed. "Why?" He looked down at her, his gray eye unreadable. "I don't let strays die on my doorstep, even broken ones." Cassandra flinched. "I'm not a stray, I was—" She stopped, the memory of the branding iron flashing in her mind. "I was rejected." "I know," he said. His gaze dropped to her bare shoulder, where the bandage covered Marcus's mark. "I smelled the burnt flesh. I smelled the betrayal." He reached out. Cassandra instinctively pulled back. Pressing herself against the headboard, he paused, his hand hovering in the air. His fingers were long, scarred, and calloused from weapons. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. It was a command, but gentle. Slowly, he lowered his hand, his knuckles grazing the side of her neck. Cassandra gasped. The contact was electric. A shiver raced across her skin, making the fine hairs on her arms stand up. It wasn't just warmth, it was a magnetic pull, a physical craving that bloomed in her stomach. His skin was rough, but his touch was incredibly delicate. He didn't pull away. He traced the line of her jaw with his thumb, his gray eye darkening as he watched her reaction. He was testing her. Or maybe he was testing himself. "Your pulse is racing," he murmured, leaning closer. Cassandra could smell him now, Rain. Cedarwood, and something distinctly masculine and wild. It was intoxicating. It made her head spin. This man was dangerous. Every instinct she had screamed that he was a killer, a king of monsters. But her body didn't want to run. Her body wanted to lean into his hand. "Who are you?" she asked again, her voice barely audible. "They call me Dante," he said. His thumb brushed her lower lip, lingering there for a heartbeat too long. "King of the unwanted. He withdrew his hand, and the loss of contact made Cassandra feel suddenly cold. He turned and walked toward the fireplace, leaning his arm against the stone mantel, staring into the flames. "You have wolfsbane in your blood, Cassandra," he said, his back to her. Cassandra blinked, the sensual fog clearing instantly. "What?" "Elena found it in your system," Dante said, turning his head so the firelight danced off his silver mask. "High concentrations. You've been ingesting it for years. It's a miracle your wolf isn't dead." "That's impossible," Cassandra argued, shaking her head. "I only took fertility herbs. The pack elder gave them to me himself to help me conceive." Dante turned fully around, his single gray eye narrowed. "Fertility herbs don't prevent shifting. They don't weaken your aura. Wolfsbane does. Someone was keeping you weak, Cassandra. Someone made sure you could never bear a child." The room spun. Morrison, the whisper, the bloodline must end. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and angry. "Why?" she choked out. "Why would they do that?" Dante walked back to the bed. The predator was gone, replaced by something intensely protective. He sat on the edge of the mattress dipping under his weight. "That," he said, his voice dropping to a low rumble, "is what we are going to find out." He looked at her, really looked at her, stripping away her defenses with a single glance. The air between them grew thick again, heavy with unspoken questions and a tension that felt like a pulled bowstring. "You are safe here," Dante said. He reached out again, this time taking her hand. His palm was hot, enveloping her smaller fingers completely. "No one touches you in Shadow Peak without my permission. You are under my protection now." Cassandra looked at their joined hands. His skin was scarred. Hers was pale and smooth. Contrast. Darkness and light. "And what is the price?" she asked, looking up at his mask. "Everything has a price. King Dante." Dante leaned in, his face inches from hers. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the captivating scent of rain and power. He smelled like salvation. He smelled like Pin. His lips curved into a small, dangerous smirk beneath the mask. "Get strong, Cassandra," he whispered, his breath brushing her ear. "Heal. And when you are ready to burn the world that rejected you, then we will discuss the price." He squeezed her hand once, a promise of violence and safety all wrapped in one, and then stood up. "Sleep," he commanded. As he walked out of the room, the heavy door clicking shut, Cassandra touched her cheek where his thumb had rested. Her skin still burned with the memory of his touch. She wasn't just a rejected Omega anymore. She was a puzzle, and the scarred king seemed determined to put her back together. For the first time in 3 years, Cassandra didn't dream of failure. She dreamed of a storm, and in the center of the storm, a silver mask waited for her. The great hall of Shadow Peak was nothing like the polished, golden court of Silver Ridge. It was built from black volcanic stone, illuminated by iron chandeliers holding hundreds of flickering candles. It smelled of smoke, old paper, and raw power. Dante sat on his throne, a massive chair carved from obsidian. He looked bored, one finger tapping a rhythm on the armrest, but Cassandra, standing in the shadows of the upper balcony, saw the tension in his jaw. Below, a messenger from Silver Ridge stood trembling. He looked small and pathetic, surrounded by Dante's warriors. "State your business and leave," Dante commanded. His voice echoed, deep and hollow. I come on behalf of Beta Marcus and Elder Morrison." The messenger stammered, holding out a scroll with a shaking hand. "They demand the return of their property. The Omega, Cassandra Miller, is a fugitive." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante stood up. The movement was slow, fluid, and terrifying. He descended the stone steps, the heavy thud of his boots the only sound in the cavernous hall. He stopped inches from the messenger. Towering over him, the silver mask gleamed in the candlelight. "Property," Dante repeated, the word tasting like bile. "In Shadow Peak. We do not have property, we have wolves." She belongs to Silver Ridge," the messenger squeaked, taking a step back. "She is marked." "She was rejected," Dante snarled. A growl ripped from his throat, causing the messenger to whimper. "Your beta threw her away. He burned her skin. He severed the bond. By the laws of the moon goddess, she belongs to no one." Dante leaned down, his gray eye boring into the messenger's soul. "Go back to your masters. Tell Marcus that Cassandra is under the personal protection of the rogue king. Tell him, if he wants her—" Dante paused, a cruel smile touching his lips. "Tell him to come and take her." The messenger didn't wait. He dropped the scroll and scrambled out of the hall, slipping on the stone floor in his haste. Cassandra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She gripped the railing of the balcony. He had defied a powerful pack for her. Why? "You can come down now, Cassandra," Dante said without looking up. She descended the spiral stairs, her bare feet silent on the stone. She was wearing a simple gray dress Elena had given her. It was loose, but it couldn't hide the way her body moved, a grace she didn't know she possessed. Dante turned to face her. The anger from the confrontation evaporated, replaced by that intense, calculating gaze. "You heard?" he asked. "I heard," she whispered. She stopped a few feet away from him. "Why risk war for me? Dante, you don't know me." "I know pain," Dante said simply. He raised a hand to his face, his fingers brushing the cold metal of his mask. "And I know what it's like to be discarded by family." He turned and began to walk toward the library. "Walk with me." They walked through the stone corridors. The castle was dark, but not scary. It felt like a fortress, a sanctuary. "I wasn't always the king of Shadow Peak," Dante said, his voice low. 10 years ago, I was the crown prince of the Northern Territories." Cassandra gasped. "The lost prince, everyone thinks you died in the Great Fire." "I did die," Dante said bitterly. "The boy I was died that night. My younger brother wanted the throne. He drugged the guards. He lit the fires while we slept." He stopped walking and turned to her. For a moment, he looked incredibly weary. "I woke up burning. I lost my family. I lost my face. I dragged myself out of the ashes. And I watched my brother crowned king the next morning." Cassandra's heart ached. Without thinking, she reached out. Her fingertips hovered near the edge of his mask. This time, he didn't pull away. He went still. "They call us monsters," she whispered, "because we don't fit their perfect mold." "We are not monsters, Cassandra," Dante said. He caught her wrist. His grip was firm, his thumb rubbing circles against her pulse point. The friction sent heat spiraling up her arm. "We are survivors, and survivors are dangerous." He pulled her slightly closer. The air between them thickened, charged with static. "Elena has finished her analysis of your blood," Dante said, changing the subject abruptly, though he didn't let go of her wrist. "Come." They entered the healing ward. Elena was waiting, her face grim. She held a vial of dark red liquid. "Cassandra," Elena said softly, "sit down." Cassandra sat. Dante stood behind her, his presence a heavy, comforting weight against her back. "The wolfsbane," Elena began, holding up a chart. "It wasn't just in your tea, it was in your food, your perfumes, even the tonic you took for headaches." Cassandra felt sick. For how long? "Since you were 18, Elena said. 3 years. The dosage was calculated perfectly, enough to suppress your wolf, enough to make your womb hostile to any life, but not enough to kill you." "Who?" Cassandra's voice broke. "The signature in the poison is rare," Dante said, his voice cold as ice. "It's a blend only used by the High Council elders. Morrison." Cassandra buried her face in her hands. It wasn't her body that had failed. It was a murder attempt, a slow, quiet murder of her lineage. She felt a hand on her shoulder, heavy, warm. Dante. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He didn't tell her it would be okay. He leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "Grieve today," he whispered, his voice vibrating through her bones. "Cry, scream, break things if you have to. But tomorrow—" His hand tightened on her shoulder, a grounding force. "Tomorrow you train. Tomorrow we turn your pain into a weapon." Thwack! Cassandra hit the dirt, hard. Dust puffed up around her face. She groaned, spitting out grit, and tried to push herself up. Her arms trembled. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. "Again," Jake barked. Jake Harrison, Dante's beta, was a mountain of a man with a shaved head and tattoos covering both arms. He didn't believe in going easy on anyone, even a recovering Omega. I can't," Cassandra wheezed, rolling onto her back. The midday sun beat down on the training grounds of Shadow Peak. "Dead wolves can't fight," Jake said, crossing his arms. "Get up." Cassandra gritted her teeth. She thought of Marcus. She thought of Morrison's smug smile, a spark of anger ignited in her chest. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She forced her shaking limbs to move, staggering to her feet. She raised her wooden training staff. "Ready!" Jake swung. It was a fast, low sweep aimed at her knees. Cassandra didn't think. She didn't analyze. Her body just moved. She jumped, tucking her legs, and the staff whistled harmlessly beneath her. As she landed, she spun, swinging her own staff at Jake's head. Jake blocked it easily, but his eyes widened in surprise. "Good reflexes, but your form is sloppy." "Allow me," a voice interrupted. Dante stepped onto the sand. He was wearing a sleeveless black tunic that showed off the intricate scars running down his arms. He looked lethal and breathtaking. Jake bowed his head and stepped back. "Alpha." Dante walked up to Cassandra. He circled her slowly, like a wolf inspecting a new pack member. His gaze felt physical, touching everywhere it landed. "Spread your feet," he commanded. Cassandra shuffled her feet apart. "Wider." He stepped in behind her, his chest pressed against her back. Cassandra's breath hitched. He was solid, hard muscle, and radiating heat. "You are fighting like a human," Dante murmured, his mouth close to her ear. "You are trying to use strength you don't have yet." He reached around her, his hands covering hers on the wooden staff. His large hands completely engulfed hers. The intimacy of it was overwhelming. "Use your center," he instructed. One of his hands slid down from the staff to rest on her hip. Cassandra nearly dropped the weapon. His hand on her hip was heavy, possessive. His fingers dug in slightly, correcting her posture. "Here," Dante whispered. "Power comes from here, not your arms." He guided her movement, rotating her hips, pressing his body against hers to show her the flow of the strike. They moved as one entity. The smell of him cedar, rain, and musk filled her senses. "Focus, Cassandra," he growled softly. "Don't focus on my hands. Focus on the target." Impossible, she thought. His body was a distraction of the highest order, but beneath the distraction, she felt it, the leverage, the power. "Now," Dante said, stepping back suddenly. "Strike." Cassandra swung. This time, the staff whistled through the air with a terrifying speed, cracking against the training dummy with a force that splintered the wood. She stared at the broken dummy, panting. She had done that. Dante nodded, a flicker of pride in his gray eye. Better. That night, Cassandra couldn't sleep. Her body ached, but her mind was racing. She wandered through the castle until she found the library. An old man was there, polishing a glass display case. It was Magnus, the keeper of archives. He had wild white hair and spectacles thick as bottle bottoms. "Ah, the new arrival," Magnus said, not looking up. "I've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" Cassandra asked. Walking into the room, the smell of old parchment was comforting. "The king said you have the eyes," Magnus mumbled. He shuffled over to a desk and picked up a small velvet box. And the timing, the stars are aligning. He held the box out to her. This was left here 25 years ago by a woman who was running for her life. Cassandra's heart skipped a beat. She took the box. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside lay a medallion. It was silver, shaped like a crescent moon entwined with a howling wolf. In the center sat a stone that looked like a piece of the night sky, dark blue with flecks of starlight. "She said," Magnus whispered, his voice trembling, "that her daughter would return for it when the false alphas began to fall." Cassandra picked up the medallion. The moment her skin touched the metal, the room vanished. A flash of white light blinded her. Cold wind, the smell of pine, a woman's voice, frantic and loving. "Hide, my little moon. Stay quiet. Mama loves you." Cassandra gasped. Dropping the medallion back into the box, she stumbled back against a bookshelf. "What was that?" she breathed. "A memory," Magnus said gravely. "Put it on, child." With shaking hands, Cassandra lifted the silver chain over her head. The cold metal settled against her sternum. Instantly, the headache that had plagued her for 3 years vanished. The fog in her mind cleared. It was like breaking the surface of the water after drowning. And then she heard it. It started as a low hum in the back of her mind. Then it grew, a sound she hadn't realized was missing until this very moment. Finally, the voice was deep, ancient, and undeniably female. It wasn't human. "Awaken, little one." The voice purred in her head. "We have slept too long." Cassandra's eyes snapped open. In the reflection of the glass case, her eyes were no longer brown. They were glowing a brilliant, iridescent silver. Dante stood in the doorway of the library. He had been watching. He saw the flash of light. He saw the change in her stance. He walked toward her, his face serious. He stopped a foot away, looking into her glowing silver eyes. "Cassandra?" he asked softly. She looked up at him. She felt powerful. She felt ancient. She felt hungry. "She's awake, Dante," Cassandra said, her voice layering with a growl that vibrated the books on the shelves. "My wolf. She's finally awake." Dante looked at the medallion, then back at her eyes. For the first time, the king of Shadow Peak looked stunned. "That is not a normal wolf," he whispered, stepping closer, drawn in by the silver light. "That is a moonborn aura." Cassandra reached out and took Dante's hand. The sparks that usually flew between them were now a torrent of energy. "Teach me," she said, squeezing his hand. "Teach me how to kill them all." Dante turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. He brought her knuckles to his lips, kissing them with a reverence that made her knees weak. "No," he said, his gray eye burning with a dark promise. "I won't teach you how to kill them. I will teach you how to rule them." The library was silent, save for the crackling of the fireplace and the ragged breathing of 2 wolves standing on the precipice of history. Magnus shuffled forward, his eyes wide behind his thick spectacles. He looked from Cassandra's glowing silver eyes to the medallion resting against her chest. "Moonborn," the old man whispered, the word hanging heavy in the air. "I thought they were a myth, a bedtime story for pups." Dante didn't look at Magnus. He couldn't take his eye off Cassandra. The silver light in her irises swirled like liquid mercury. The energy coming off her wasn't the jagged, aggressive aura of a regular alpha. It was cool, immense, and terrifyingly calm, like the tide before a tsunami. "What does it mean?" Cassandra asked. Her voice still carried that dual resonance her human voice layered with the ancient growl of her wolf. "It means," Dante said, his thumb still tracing the back of her hand, "that you were never an omega. You were never even a beta." Magnus scurried to a dusty shelf and pulled out a massive, leather-bound tome. He slammed it onto the table, dust motes dancing in the candlelight. He flipped through the yellowed pages frantically until he stopped at an illustration, a wolf with a coat of pure silver, standing beneath a blood-red moon. "The Moonborn," Magnus read, his voice trembling. "Direct descendants of the first wolves. They do not inherit the alpha spark through bloodlines or combat. They are chosen by the goddess herself. They are born to rule not a pack, but all packs." Cassandra stared at the picture. Morrison knew, she realized, a cold chill running down her spine. "That's why he poisoned me. He didn't just want to stop me from having a baby. He wanted to stop this." "He feared you," Dante said. He let go of her hand, but the loss of contact made the air feel colder. If the packs knew a Moonborn existed, the Council's authority would crumble. You are a threat to the entire hierarchy. "But I'm weak," Cassandra argued, the silver glow in her eyes fading slightly as doubt crept in. "I can barely fight Jake for 5 minutes." "Your body is weak," Dante corrected. "Your muscles are atrophied from poison, but your spirit is ancient." He looked at Magnus. "What is the ritual?" Magnus adjusted his glasses. "To fully awaken the Moonborn wolf, she needs the blood of a king, a true alpha who has walked through fire." Dante went still. He looked at his scarred hands. "A king who has walked through fire," he repeated softly. He turned to Cassandra. "Tonight is the full moon." The ritual took place in the castle's courtyard, under the open sky. The moon was a perfect white orb, hanging low and heavy. The air was crisp. Jake and Elena stood guard at the perimeter, their backs turned to give their alpha privacy. In the center of the courtyard stood an ancient stone altar, weathered by centuries of rain. "Are you ready?" Dante asked. He held a ceremonial dagger, its blade gleaming in the moonlight. Cassandra nodded. She wore a simple white shift dress. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She was terrified. But beneath the fear, her wolf was pacing, eager, demanding release. "Give me your hand," Dante said. She extended her left hand. Dante took it. He didn't hesitate. He drew the blade across her palm. Cassandra hissed, but held still. Dark blood welled up. Then, Dante turned the blade on himself. He sliced his own palm, right over the lifeline. "Blood of the Moonborn," he recited, his voice deep and solemn, "and blood of the Shadow King." He pressed his bleeding palm against hers. The moment their blood mixed, the world exploded. It wasn't a sound, it was a sensation. A shockwave of pure energy blasted outward from their joined hands, knocking the wind out of Cassandra. She gasped, her head thrown back. The silver light returned to her eyes, brighter than before. "Let me out," her wolf screamed. Bones cracked, muscles reshaped. Usually, shifting was painful. But this felt like coming home. Cassandra fell to her knees, her body contorting. Silver fur sprouted from his skin, shimmering like starlight, her jaw elongated. Her hands became paws with obsidian claws. Within seconds, Cassandra was gone. In her place stood a wolf of magnificent proportions. She was huge, almost as big as Dante's wolf form. Her fur was a blinding, metallic silver. Her eyes were pools of blue fire. Dante stared at her. He dropped to one knee, bowing his head, not in submission, but in reverence. The silver wolf Cassandra threw her head back and howled. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated power. It echoed off the castle walls, rolled down the mountain, and pierced the forest below. Every wolf in Shadow Peak, every rogue in the valley stopped and looked up. They felt it in their bones. The queen had awakened. But the power came with a price. As the howl faded, Cassandra's legs gave out. The sudden surge of magic was too much for her weakened physical form. The silver wolf collapsed, shifting back into human form in a blur of light. Dante was there instantly. He caught her before she hit the stones. Cassandra. She was limp in his arms, her skin burning hot, her eyes rolled back in her head. "I saw her," she mumbled, delirium taking over. "My mother, Liana." Dante scooped her up into his arms, holding her close to his chest. "Stay with me, Cassandra." "She's dead," Cassandra whispered, a tear leaking from her closed eye. "Morrison killed her. He killed them all." Dante's jaw tightened. He looked down at the woman in his arms, naked, vulnerable, and more powerful than anyone realized. "He will pay." Dante vowed to the night air. "I promise you, my queen, he will burn for this." News traveled fast in the wolf world. The howl had been heard for miles. 3 days later, the war drums began to beat. In the strategic map room of Shadow Peak, the mood was grim. A large map of the territories was spread across the table, markers indicating troop movements. "They're calling it the Sacred Alliance," Jake said, slamming a report onto the table. He looked tired. "Silver Ridge has united with 4 other traditional packs: the Bloodfang, the Ironwood, the Rivercross, and the High Pines. 5 packs against 1. Dante mused. He stood at the head of the table, his mask reflecting the candlelight. He looked calm, but his hand was clenched into a fist. "They have 1,500 wolves," Jake continued. "We have 800, and half of ours are recovering from injuries or malnutrition." Cassandra sat to Dante's right. She looked different. Her hair was braided back tightly. She wore leather training gear that fit her new, slowly building muscle. The silver in her eyes had settled into a steady, unnerving glow. "It's not just about numbers," Cassandra said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "They are moving here," she pointed to a valley on the map, "through the Blackwood Pass." "That's the fastest route," one of the older rogue captains said dismissively. "Of course they are." "No." Cassandra shook her head. "It's a trap. Morrison thinks we will defend the castle. He expects a siege. He wants to bottle us up in Shadow Peak and starve us out." She looked up at Dante. "He thinks like a politician, not a warrior. He thinks we are scared rats hiding in a hole." Dante raised an eyebrow. "And what do you propose?" Cassandra stood up. She picked up a marker and drew a red line through the supply route behind the enemy forces. "We don't defend," she said, her voice hard. "We attack. We hit their supply lines here at the river crossing. We starve them." Silence filled the room. The captains looked at each other. It was bold. It was aggressive. "It's risky," Jake said, rubbing his chin. "If we send forces out, the castle is vulnerable." "The castle is stone," Dante said suddenly. "Stone can be rebuilt. My people cannot." He looked at Cassandra with a mixture of pride and intensity. "She is right. They expect victims. We will show them predators." Later that evening, the castle was a hive of activity. Weapons were sharpened, armor was strapped on. Dante found Cassandra on the ramparts, looking out over the dark forest. The wind whipped her hair around her face. "You have a mind for war," Dante said, leaning on the stone wall beside her. "I spent 3 years listening to Marcus discuss tactics with his father," she said bitterly. "I was invisible to them, just a piece of furniture. They didn't think the Barren Omega could understand strategy." Dante turned to her. "You are not that woman anymore." "I know," she sighed. "But the fear, it's still there. Dante, what if I fail?" What if I'm not the queen the prophecy talks about? Dante reached out and took her chin in his hand, turning her face to his. His thumb brushed her lower lip. "Look at me," he commanded. She looked into his gray eye. "I have seen kings rise and fall," Dante said softly. "I have seen alphas puff out their chests and roar. None of them have what you have." "What do I have?" she whispered. "Heart," Dante said. "You fight because you want to save people. They fight because they want to own them." He leaned closer. The air between them crackled. His lips were inches from hers. Cassandra's breath hitched. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted to taste the darkness and the fire. "Dante," she breathed. "Alpha." They sprang apart. Vincent, one of the council advisors, came running up the stairs. He looked flustered. "Scouts report the vanguard is 2 hours away," Vincent said, panting. "But there's something else." Dante's face hardened. The mask was back in place emotionally and physically. "Report!" "They have a prisoner," Vincent said, avoiding Cassandra's eyes. "A girl, blonde. They have her displayed in a cage at the front of the column." Cassandra went cold. "Isabel?" "Marcus's new mate?" Dante asked. "Why would they cage their own Luna?" Cassandra asked, confused. Vincent hesitated. "The spies say Morrison claims she is a traitor. He says her blood is impure. He plans to sacrifice her to bless the battle." Cassandra gripped the stone wall until her knuckles turned white. Isabel had taken her place. Isabel had watched her get branded and done nothing. Isabel was the enemy. But Cassandra remembered the look in Isabel's eyes that night. It wasn't triumph. It was fear. "We have to save her," Cassandra said. "She is your enemy," Dante reminded her. "She took your husband. She took your home." "She is a pawn," Cassandra said firmly. "Just like I was. Morrison is using her. If we let her die, we are no better than them." She turned to Dante, her silver eyes blazing. "We save her." Dante looked at her for a long moment. He saw the resolve. He saw the compassion that the poison hadn't been able to kill. "You are a strange queen, Cassandra," Dante murmured. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. "But you are my queen." He turned to Vincent. "Prepare the strike team. We move in 10 minutes. As Vincent ran off, Dante grabbed Cassandra's arm. "Wait." He pulled her close, his hand tangling in the hair at the base of her neck. He didn't ask this time. He crushed his mouth to hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was fierce, desperate, and hungry. It tasted of war and impending danger. Cassandra melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. For a moment, there was no war, no prophecy, just the man and the woman, and the fire burning between them. Dante pulled back, his forehead resting against hers, both of them breathing heavily. "Stay alive tonight, Cassandra," he whispered roughly, "because I am not done with you yet." Cassandra smiled, a dangerous wolfish smile. "Try and keep up, old man." She turned and ran toward the armory, leaving the king of Shadow Peak staring after her, his hand touching his lips, his heart beating faster than it had in 10 years. The storm had arrived, and it was beautiful. The dark valley was not silent. It hissed with the sound of rain falling on slick black rocks. Cassandra crouched on a high ridge, mud smeared across her cheeks to mask her scent. Below, the narrow pass snaked through the mountains a choke point beside her. Dante was a motionless shadow, his breathing undetectable. "They're coming," he whispered. The sound didn't travel. It was projected directly into her ear. Down in the valley, torches flickered. The vanguard of the Sacred Alliance, 300 wolves, marching in human form to conserve energy, pulling wagons of supplies. And in the center, a large iron cage on wheels. Inside, a blonde figure huddled in the corner. Isabel. Cassandra felt a growl vibrate in her chest. Focus. She told herself, don't let the anger blind you. Wait for the signal. Dante commanded the troops through the mind link. The enemy column moved deeper into the trap. They were confident, loud, unsuspecting. They thought they were marching toward a siege, not an ambush. When the lead wagon hit the marker, a white stone Cassandra had placed earlier, Dante stood up. He didn't scream, he didn't howl, he simply unleashed his aura. It slammed into the valley floor like a physical weight. The enemy wolves stumbled, gasping as the air grew heavy with the crushing pressure of a royal alpha. Now, Dante roared. From the ridges, arrows rained down not to kill, but to disable the wagons. Then, the Shadow Peak wolves leaped. It was chaos. Cassandra jumped. The wind rushed past her ears as she fell 30 feet, landing in a crouch right in the middle of the enemy line. 2 enemy warriors rushed her, shifting midair into brown wolves. Cassandra didn't shift. She spun. Channeling the Moonborn energy into her limbs, she struck the first wolf with a palm to the snout. A pulse of silver light exploded on impact. The wolf yelped, disoriented, and collapsed as if drunk. The second wolf lunged for her throat. Duck. She dropped, sweeping the wolf's legs as it fell. She felt a familiar presence at her back. Dante. He was fighting back to back with her. He held a broadsword in one hand, decapitating a spear that was thrust at him, while punching an attacker with his other hand. To the cage, Dante shouted over the din of battle. They moved as a single unit. Cassandra was fast, fluid, using her aura to sicken and slow their enemies. Dante was the hammer, brutal and efficient, clearing the path. They reached the iron cage. Isabel looked up, her face bruised and terrified. When she saw Cassandra, her eyes went wide. Cassandra, she sobbed, you came. Get the lock, Cassandra yelled to Jake, who had just fought his way to them. Jake raised his battle axe to smash the lock. Look out. The scream came from Elena on the ridge. Cassandra spun around just in time to see Vincent, the council advisor, standing behind Dante. He held a dagger glowing with green poison. He wasn't aiming for the enemy. He was aiming for the gap in Dante's armor. No. Cassandra didn't think. She threw out her hand. A lash of silver energy, like a whip of solid light, shot from her fingertips. It wrapped around Vincent's wrist. She yanked. Vincent screamed as his arm was jerked violently to the side. The dagger clattered to the stones. Jake abandoned the lock and tackled Vincent, pinning the traitor to the mud. You scumbag, Jake roared, punching Vincent in the jaw. You were selling us out. The battle around them faltered. The sudden flash of Cassandra's magic had stunned both sides. The Sacred Alliance soldiers stared at her, at the woman glowing with moonlight in the middle of a rainstorm. She is the Moonborn, one of the enemy soldiers whispered, dropping his sword. Dante stepped forward, his voice booming. Throw down your weapons, or die where you stand. Leaderless and terrified of the supernatural display, the vanguard surrendered. An hour later, the valley was quiet. The prisoners were bound. The wounded were being tended to. Vincent was dragged before Dante and Cassandra near the broken cage. He was bleeding, his nose broken. Why? Dante asked, his voice deceptively calm. Vincent spat blood on the ground. Because you can't win. Morrison has the old magic. He has the shadow demon. Cassandra froze. The what? The shadow demon. Vincent laughed wheezingly. An ancient entity of darkness. Morrison is summoning it tonight at the ruins of the old temple. He's going to bond with it. Vincent looked at Isabel, who was shivering under a blanket nearby. He needed her blood, Vincent sneered. Moonborn blood, even diluted, it's powerful. Cassandra looked at Dante. Isabel is my cousin. Distant, Vincent said, but Morrison realized he didn't need the pure Moonborn to start the ritual, just to finish it. Dante drew his sword. Take him away. Lock him in the deepest cell we have. As Vincent was dragged away, Dante turned to the troops. He removed his mask. Gasps rippled through the ranks of the Shadow Peak wolves. Most had never seen his face. They saw the burns, the twisted scar tissue that pulled at his lip, but they also saw the fierce determination in his gray eyes. We have won the skirmish, Dante announced, but the war is just beginning. We move to the old temple. Tonight. He turned to Cassandra. She reached up and touched the unscarred side of his face. You're bleeding, she said softly, wiping a smear of blood from his cheek. It's not mine, he said. He caught her hand and kissed the palm. You fought well, my queen. I had a good teacher, she replied. Around them, the wolves cheered, but the sky above was changing. The clouds were parting, revealing a moon that was no longer white. It was turning a deep, sickly red. The march back to Shadow Peak to regroup was brief. While the army prepared for the final assault, Dante pulled Cassandra away. Come with me, he said. He led her up a hidden staircase behind the throne room, spiraling up into one of the highest towers. He pushed open a heavy wooden door. Cassandra gasped. It was a garden, but unlike the frozen, barren forest outside, this place was lush. It was enclosed by glass walls, warmed by geothermal vents from the mountain, and everywhere there were flowers, white flowers that glowed softly in the twilight. Moonflowers, Dante said, closing the door behind them. The air here was warm and smelled of vanilla and night-blooming jasmine. They only bloom in the dark. It's beautiful, Cassandra whispered, walking among the blooms. I built this, Dante said, standing by the railing that overlooked the dark mountains. When I first came here, when I was burnt and angry, I needed something that could survive the darkness, something beautiful that didn't need the sun. Cassandra turned to him. He had taken off his armor, wearing only a loose white shirt. The red light of the blood moon outside cast long shadows across the floor, but inside the garden, the white flowers created a sanctuary of pale light. You're talking about yourself, she said softly. Dante looked at her. I'm talking about us. He walked toward her. The tension of the battle was gone, replaced by a raw, aching vulnerability. I knew who you were, Dante confessed, his voice rough. The moment I found you in the forest, I smelled the ozone. I felt the pull. I knew you were the one the legends spoke of. Why didn't you say anything? Cassandra asked, stepping closer until their chests were almost touching. Because power given is weak, Dante said, quoting his own lesson. Power earned is unbreakable. You needed to find your own strength. Cassandra, if I had told you you were a queen, you wouldn't have believed me. You had to become her. Cassandra looked up at his face, the scars, the mask he held in his hand, the gray eye that looked at her with such intense devotion. I was so afraid, she admitted, of Marcus, of the rejection, of being nothing. You were never nothing. Dante growled low in his throat. He dropped the mask onto a bench. He framed her face with his large, scarred hands. You are the moon that lights my darkness, Cassandra. And you, she whispered, rising on her tiptoes, are the shield that protects it. He kissed her. This wasn't like the kiss on the ramparts. That was adrenaline. This was a vow. His lips were soft, moving against hers with a slow, deliberate heat that melted her knees. Cassandra wound her arms around his neck, pulling him down. She could feel the bond, not the thin, fragile thread she had with Marcus, but a thick, golden cable of connection slamming into place. It wasn't just a mate bond, it was a soul tie. Two broken halves clicking together to make something indestructible. Dante groaned, a low rumble of vibration against her lips, and deepened the kiss. His hand slid down her back, pressing her body flush against his. She felt safe. She felt worshipped. "You're beautiful," she murmured against his mouth. She traced the scar running down his cheek. "Every part of you." Dante pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against hers. His breathing was ragged. "I love you," he said. The words hung in the warm, scented air. Cassandra's heart swelled. "I love you, Dante." A polite, hesitant clearing of a throat broke the moment. They pulled apart. Though Dante kept his arm firmly around Cassandra's waist, Magnus stood in the doorway of the garden, holding an ancient scroll. He looked apologetic, but terrified. "Your Majesties," Magnus squeaked, I have translated the rest of the prophecy." Dante's face hardened, the king returning instantly. "Speak." Magnus unrolled the parchment. "It says, when the moon bleeds red, the Moonborn Queen shall rise, with the scarred king beside her. She will face the shadow demon." "We know that part," Dante said impatiently. "There is more," Magnus said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Only true love's sacrifice can seal the darkness forever." Cassandra felt a cold pit open in her stomach. Sacrifice. "Does it mean death?" Dante demanded, stepping in front of Cassandra as if to shield her from the words themselves. "It is unclear," Magnus admitted, "but the ritual Morrison is performing, it has begun." He pointed out through the glass walls. In the distance, miles away, a beam of purple and black light shot up into the sky from the ruins of the old temple. It pierced the red moon. The clouds began to swirl, forming a vortex. "Isabel," Cassandra realized, "he's using her." "He needs a Moonborn to open the gate," Magnus explained. "Isabel's blood is weak, so the gate is opening slowly. But once it is open, Morrison will invite the demon into his own body. He will become a god of death." "And then," Cassandra asked, "then he will need pure Moonborn blood to make the possession permanent." Magnus looked at her with sad eyes. "He needs you, my queen." Dante turned to Cassandra. He gripped her shoulders. "We leave now," he said. "We stop the ritual, we save the girl, and we kill Morrison before anything comes out of that gate." "And the sacrifice?" Cassandra asked, looking at the ominous beam of light. Dante's expression was fierce. "I have lost everything once. Cassandra, my family, my face, my throne. I will not lose you." He picked up his silver mask and clicked it back into place. "If a sacrifice is needed," the scarred king vowed, "I will burn the entire world to the ground before I let it be you." Cassandra took his hand. Her silver eyes began to glow, matching the intensity of the moonflowers around them. "We go together," she said, "always." They turned and walked out of the garden, leaving the peace behind, stepping into the red night to face their destiny. The ruins of the old Moonborn temple sat atop a jagged cliff, silhouetted against the bleeding red moon. It was a place of twisted stone pillars and ancient altars, now pulsating with a sickly purple light. The air smelled of ozone and rotting meat. Cassandra, Dante, and their elite strike team crouched in the tree line. There were only 20 of them, the best warriors Shadow Peak had to offer. Jake and Elena were among them. "Morrison has fortified the perimeter," Jake whispered, lowering his binoculars. 200 wolves, heavily armed. "We can't fight them all," Dante said, his voice low. "We need to get to the inner sanctum before the portal fully opens." Cassandra closed her eyes. She reached out with her senses, feeling the hum of the earth, the trees, the night. "I can cloak us," she said, opening her eyes. They glowed with a faint, steady silver light. "Cloak 20 wolves," Elena asked, skeptical. "That takes immense power." "I have it," Cassandra said simply. She looked at Dante. "Trust me." Dante nodded. "Move out." Cassandra raised her hands. A mist began to rise from the ground, not the natural fog of the forest, but a shimmering, silver vapor. It wrapped around the strike team, dampening their scent, muffling their footsteps, and bending the light around them. To the guards patrolling the ruins, the strike team was nothing more than a passing shadow. They slipped past the outer defenses, moving like ghosts. They climbed the crumbling stone steps, heartbeats pounding in their ears. At the entrance to the inner sanctum, a single figure stood guard. Marcus. He looked terrible. His clothes were torn, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He paced back and forth, muttering to himself. Dante signaled for the team to hold. He stepped forward. Letting the cloak drop from his form, Cassandra stepped up beside him. "Marcus," Cassandra said. Marcus jumped, spinning around. When he saw her glowing, powerful, standing beside the massive king in the silver mask, he stumbled back. "Cassandra," he croaked, you're alive." "Step aside," Dante growled, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "I can't," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "He has Isabel. He said if I let anyone in, he'll kill her." "He's going to kill her anyway, you fool," Cassandra said, stepping closer. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was pitying. "Morrison is using her to open a door to hell. Do you really think he cares about your mate?" Marcus looked at the purple light pulsing from the sanctum behind him. He looked at his hands. "I didn't know," he whispered. "About the poison, about your mother. I wanted a strong pack." "You chose power over love," Cassandra said, "and now you have neither." Marcus's face crumbled. He fell to his knees, dropping his sword. "Go," he wept. "Save her, please." Dante didn't spare him a glance. He kicked the doors open. The inner sanctum was a nightmare. The stone floor was etched with glowing runes. In the center, Isabel was chained to a black altar, unconscious, her skin pale as death. Above her, a tear in reality had opened a swirling vortex of absolute darkness. Standing before the altar was Elder Morrison. But it wasn't the Morrison they knew. He had grown taller. His skin was gray, his veins bulging black. Shadows coiled around his legs like snakes. "Right on time," Morrison's voice boomed. It sounded like two voices speaking at once, one human, one demonic. "Dear Cassandra." He turned, his eyes completely black. "I was afraid Isabel wouldn't last much longer," Morrison sneered, gesturing to the unconscious girl. "I need pure blood to finish the work." "It ends now. Morrison!" Dante roared. He charged, shifting mid-stride into his massive black wolf form. Dante hit Morrison with the force of a freight train. But Morrison didn't move. He caught the giant wolf by the throat with one hand. "Pathetic," Morrison laughed. He threw Dante. The king flew across the room, smashing into a stone pillar with a bone-shattering crunch. "Dante!" Cassandra screamed. "Get the girl!" Jake yelled, leading the strike team into the fray. Morrison waved his hand. A wave of dark energy blasted outward, knocking the warriors back like bowling pins. "You cannot stop the inevitable," Morrison intoned. He turned back to Cassandra. "Your mother's blood opened the first seal 25 years ago. Yours will complete it." He pulled a jagged obsidian dagger from his robes. Cassandra shifted. Her silver wolf materialized, snarling. She lunged at him. But Morrison was faster. Shadow tendrils shot from the ground, wrapping around her legs, her torso, her muzzle. They formed a cage of solid darkness, pinning her to the floor. "No," Cassandra struggled, burning the shadows with her light, but there were too many. Morrison walked over to her. He knelt down, the dagger poised over her flank. "Don't worry," he whispered. "It won't hurt. For long." He slashed. The blade cut deep into Cassandra's shoulder. She screamed a high, keening yelp that tore through the sanctum. Morrison collected the silver blood on the blade. He turned and flicked it into the swirling vortex above the altar. The portal stopped spinning. It expanded. A sound like 1,000 souls screaming filled the air. A massive clawed hand reached out of the void, then a head, crowned with horns of black smoke. The shadow demon emerged. It was colossal. Filling the cavernous room, it had no distinct face, just a swirling abyss of darkness where eyes should be. It radiated cold, a cold that froze the marrow in their bones. Morrison laughed maniacally. Yes, I am your vessel. He opened his arms. The demon roared and surged forward, diving into Morrison's body. Morrison arched his back, screaming in agony and ecstasy. His body grew, muscles tearing and reforming, horns sprouted from his forehead, his skin turned to obsidian armor. When he looked down, he was no longer a man. He was a god of death. I am eternal. The Morrison demon bellowed. The sound cracked the stone walls. Dante, back in human form, pulled himself out of the rubble. He was bleeding from a head wound, his arm hanging at an odd angle, but he grabbed his sword. Attack, he ordered weakly. The remaining Shadow Peak warriors charged. It was a slaughter. The demon swatted them aside like flies. Jake was thrown against a wall, sliding down, motionless. Elena tried to cast a healing shield, but the dark energy shattered it instantly. Cassandra was still trapped in the shadow cage, bleeding. She watched her friends falling. She watched Dante, broken and battered, staggering toward the monster, refusing to give up. This is it, she thought. The prophecy. We failed. She looked at the altar. Isabel was stirring, moaning in pain. Only true love's sacrifice can seal the darkness forever. Cassandra looked at Dante. He was fighting a losing battle, dodging blows that shattered the stone floor, desperate to get to her. He was fighting for her. He was ready to die for her. Sacrifice. Suddenly, she understood. The prophecy didn't mean death. Death was easy. Death was giving up. True sacrifice was letting go of the fear, letting go of the ego, letting go of the need to fight darkness with darkness. The Moonborn power wasn't a weapon of war, it was a beacon. Dante! Cassandra yelled through the mind link. Dante turned his head, his gray eye meeting hers. Don't fight it, she commanded. Feel me. Cassandra closed her eyes. She stopped struggling against the cage. She stopped trying to burn the shadows with anger. Instead, she reached deep inside herself, to the place where her love for Dante lived, the place where her compassion for Isabel, for her pack, even for Marcus, resided. She began to hum. A soft, melodic sound. It wasn't a growl. It was a song, the song of the moon. Her silver wolf began to glow, brighter, brighter. The light wasn't hot, it was warm, it was pure. The shadow cage hissed and evaporated like mist in the morning sun. Cassandra stood up. She shifted back to human form, naked and unashamed, glowing with an intensity that made it hard to look at her. The demon turned, shielding its eyes. What is this light? It burns. It's not fire, Morrison, Cassandra said, her voice echoing with the power of 1,000 ancestors. It's truth. She walked toward him. The shadows tried to grab her, but they dissolved upon touching her skin. Dante, she called out, with me. Dante understood. He dropped his sword. He walked to her side, taking her hand. His own aura, gold and fierce, merged with her silver light. Together, he whispered. Together, she echoed. They didn't attack. They didn't strike. They simply pushed. They pushed their love, their hope, their unity outward in a massive wave of golden silver energy. The wave hit the demon. No! The monster shrieked. It wasn't pain, it was rejection. The darkness couldn't exist in the presence of such absolute light. It was like trying to hold a shadow in a room full of suns. The demon was ripped from Morrison's body. It clawed at the air, trying to anchor itself, but the light washed it away, banishing it back into the void. With a final thunderous crack, the portal snapped shut. Silence fell. Morrison collapsed. He was just an old, shriveled man again, lying in a heap on the floor. Cassandra and Dante stood together, their hands clasped, surrounded by a fading glow. It was over. Dante turned to her, pulling her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. "You did it. You saved us." "We did it," she corrected, leaning against him, exhausted but alive. From the corner of the room, a slow clapping started. They turned. Marcus was standing there, helping a limping Isabel to her feet. He wasn't clapping mockingly. He was clapping in awe. And behind him, the warriors of the Sacred Alliance, those who had rushed in when the portal opened, lowered their weapons. They fell to their knees, one by one. They weren't bowing to a conqueror. They were bowing to the Moonborn Queen. The red moon outside faded, returning to a brilliant, cleansing silver. Dawn was breaking. The sanctum was silent, save for the labored breathing of the survivors and the soft weeping of the man who had tried to become a god. Elder Morrison lay curled on the stone floor, his robes tattered, his skin gray and sagging. The demon had left him hollowed out, a shell of the tyrant he once was. Cassandra walked toward him. Her feet were bare. Stepping lightly over the cracked stones, she stopped a few feet away. Morrison looked up. His eyes were no longer black, but watery and terrified. He scrambled backward, crab-walking away from her until his back hit the altar. "Don't kill me," he whimpered. "Please, I was trying to save us. The prophecies said chaos was coming." "You were the chaos," Cassandra said softly. Dante stepped up beside her. He still held his sword, his knuckles white. "Give me the order. My queen. He dies today." The atmosphere in the room tightened. Every Wolf Shadow Peak warriors, Sacred Alliance soldiers, Marcus. Isabel held their breath. This was justice. This was the way of the wolf, an eye for an eye. Cassandra looked down at Morrison. She saw the pathetic creature shivering in his own filth. She felt the rage of her ancestors, the grief for her mother, the years of pain he had stolen from her. But then she looked at Dante. She saw the blood on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. If she ordered this execution, the cycle would continue. Blood would beget blood. "No," Cassandra said. Dante blinked. "No. Killing him is too easy," Cassandra said. She turned to the crowd of kneeling wolves. "We are not savages. We do not kill defeated old men who can no longer hurt us." She looked back at Morrison. "Your punishment is life. Elder Morrison, you will live to see the world you tried to destroy thrive without you. You will live in the gardens of the new temple, tending the soil with your hands, stripped of your rank, your magic, and your voice in the council." Morrison slumped, burying his face in his hands. For a man addicted to power, irrelevance was a fate worse than death. Cassandra turned to the room. Her silver eyes swept over the kneeling soldiers of the Sacred Alliance. "Stand up," she commanded. They hesitated, looking at each other slowly. They rose. "Go back to your packs," Cassandra said, her voice ringing clear and strong. "Tell your alphas that the war is over. Tell them the shadow demon is gone. Tell them—" She took Dante's hand, interlacing their fingers. "Tell them a new era has begun, an era where no wolf is rejected, where no pup is judged by their bloodline, but by their heart." A murmur of agreement ran through the room. Marcus stepped forward, supporting Isabel. Isabel looked pale, but alive. She looked at Cassandra with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," Isabel whispered. "You saved me. After everything I did." "We are family," Isabel, Cassandra said, a small smile touching her lips. Distant, messy, and complicated, but family. Marcus looked at Dante. He didn't bow, but he nodded a gesture of deep respect between warriors. I was wrong, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. About everything. You are the king she deserved. Dante pulled Cassandra closer to his side. Yes, I am. Marcus turned to Isabel. Come on, let's go home. As the sun began to rise properly, flooding the ruined sanctum with golden light, the tension finally broke. Jake limped over, his arm in a sling, grinning like a madman. Elena was right behind him, fussing over his bandages. Well, Jake laughed, wincing as he clapped Dante on the uninjured shoulder. That went better than expected. I only broke 3 ribs. Dante chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. He looked at Cassandra. The silver glow in her eyes had faded to a warm, honey brown, but the power was still there, humming just beneath the surface. It is finished, he said quietly. No, Cassandra corrected, leaning her head on his shoulder as they watched the sun crest over the mountains. It's just starting. 6 months later. The rebuilt Temple of the Moon sat in the center of the valley, a magnificent structure of white stone and glass. It wasn't a fortress, it was a gathering place. Today, the courtyard was packed. Representatives from every pack in the continent were there. Silver Ridge, Bloodfang, Ironwood, and dozens of smaller packs. Even the rogues were there, standing proudly in the front rows, no longer outcasts. Banners of silver and gold snapped in the wind. Cassandra stood on the balcony, looking out at the sea of faces. She wore a gown of shimmering silver silk that pooled around her feet. On her head sat a simple circlet of platinum, woven to look like moonflowers. She was nervous. Her hand drifted to her stomach, resting on the small, noticeable bump there. Stop fidgeting, a deep voice rumbled in her ear. Dante wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. He wore a formal black tunic with silver embroidery. He still wore a mask, but it was smaller now, covering only the worst of the scars around his eye. He didn't hide anymore. Are they ready? Cassandra asked. They have been ready for months, Dante said, kissing her cheek. They are waiting for their queen. Our queen, she corrected. Turning in his arms, she fixed his collar. And their king. Consort, Dante teased. Technically, I am the king consort. You are my partner, Cassandra said fiercely, in everything. The horns blew. A hush fell over the crowd. Cassandra and Dante stepped out to the railing. A roar of cheers erupted, a sound so loud it shook the leaves off the trees. Moonborn, Moonborn, Shadow King. Cassandra raised a hand, and the crowd fell silent instantly. Years ago, she began, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the valley, I was told I was broken. I was told I had no value. She looked at Marcus and Isabel. Standing in the crowd, they smiled up at her. They looked happy, lighter, free from the burdens of ambition. But we learned that value is not given by a title, Cassandra continued. It is not given by a mate bond. It is not given by an elder. She looked at the rogue wolves, at the orphans running near the fountains, at Morrison tending the rose bushes in the far corner of the garden, looking peaceful for the first time in his life. We define our own worth, Cassandra declared, by how we love, by how we forgive, by how we stand together when the darkness comes. She took Dante's hand and raised it high. Let it be known, she announced, from this day forth, there are no exiles, there are no rejected, there is only the united pack under the silver moon. The cheer that followed was deafening. Wolves shifted and howled at the sky, a symphony of unity that echoed across the mountains. Later that evening, the celebrations were in full swing. Music, dancing, and feasting filled the valley. Cassandra and Dante retreated to their private balcony. The noise of the party drifted up to them, a happy hum. Cassandra leaned against the railing, sighing contentedly. Her feet hurt, but her heart was full. "Magnus told me today," she said softly. "Told you what?" Dante asked, pouring 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "About the babies," she said, smiling. Dante froze. Babies plural. Cassandra laughed. "Twins! A boy and a girl." Dante set the bottle down. He walked over to her, his face filled with awe. He dropped to his knees in front of her, pressing his face against her belly. "Twins," he whispered. "Gods help us." "One will have your temper," Cassandra teased, running her fingers through his dark hair. "And one will have your stubbornness," Dante countered, looking up at her. His gray eyes shone with unshed tears. "I never thought I would have this. A family. A home." "You earned it, Dante," Cassandra said. "We both did." He stood up and kissed her slow, deep, and full of promise. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked, pulling back. "The quiet life before you were a queen." Cassandra looked out over her kingdom. She saw the lights, the families, the peace she had helped build. "No," she said. "I was waiting to become who I was meant to be, not despite the pain, but because of it." She looked up at the moon, full and bright and silver. "This is my story," she whispered to the night air. "This is our moon-bound destiny." Dante pulled her close as the wind blew through the valley, carrying the scent of moonflowers and new beginnings.